stop everything you are doing right now, close your other tabs, and put down whatever is in your hand. Because what I am about to reveal is not market commentary, it is not a prediction, and it is certainly not another false alarm. For the next few minutes, I need you to forget the prices, forget the charts, and forget what social media is telling you. Because we are entering the most dangerous phase of a structural collapse that the financial world is desperately trying to keep quiet. By the time the mainstream media picks this up, it will already be far too late to react. Because once a system failure of this magnitude becomes official, the meaningful positioning is already over. Early this morning, while most investors were still asleep, massive institutional banks quietly pulled out of silver trading operations, not because of routine maintenance or a systems upgrade, but because their internal risk systems literally forbade them from taking another trade to avoid losses so devastating. They would threaten the very existence of the institutions. At the exact same time, a classified internal memo began circulating between defense contractors and federal procurement officers stating that physical silver availability has reached mission-critical failure thresholds. This is no longer just a financial story. It has transitioned into a national security event, a modern sovereign default, where the underlying asset is simply not available at the posted price or any price at all. The numbers you see flashing on your screen right now do not represent reality. They represent a lag behind a collapse that has started quietly, methodically, and by design. These banks didn't exit because they are bearish. They exited because they are terrified that the mathematics have broken, their models have failed, and the assumptions that have underpinned the paper-silver market for decades have just shattered. You must understand that silver does not have one market. It has two markets pretending to be one. One is the physical market of actual bars and logistics, and the other is a paper casino of futures options. And rehypothecated claims stacked endlessly on top of a shrinking pile of metal. For 40 years, the paper market dominated because nobody asked for delivery, but that behavior just changed. We are currently staring at a ratio of 23-1, meaning for every single ounce of real silver sitting in a registered warehouse, there are 23 paper claims on that same ounce. This is a structure built on the assumption that you will never ask for the metal, and right now, that assumption is being tested by industrial users, defense-linked manufacturers, and sovereign entities who do not accept cash substitutes.
The default clock did not just start. It already went off on December 31st at 11:47 p.m. local time when port officials in Shanghai began turning away silver shipments headed for approved vaults in the United States. When New York picked up the phone for an emergency lifeline to Beijing, the line didn't just ring. Beijing effectively hung up, rejecting the entire logic of the paper game. At 2:14 p.m. Eastern Time, a Gulfstream jet carrying senior officials from J.P. Morgan, the CFTC, and the Chicago Fed lifted off from JFK bound for Hong Kong to improvise a rescue. They offered a single, desperate proposal, an emergency purchase of 50 million ounces of silver paid for in U.S. treasuries through a bilateral currency swap to dodge export laws. The Chinese officials looked at that proposal for exactly 37 minutes before saying no. They told the Americans that while the West runs a casino of promises, China holds the actual metal and will not sacrifice its strategic stockpile to save a paper game. By the time the American delegation was back on that jet, the first Shanghai port was already stamping silver containers, with export clearance denied, sealing the fate of the January delivery month. This is the event horizon where a synthetic pricing system built on leverage and derivatives finally collides with the reality of physical scarcity. The COMEX is now facing a 70% shortfall in deliverable inventory, a 42 million ounce hole that cannot be fixed with more paper promises. To hide this, the exchange has quietly updated its rules under a boring title regarding force majeure conditions, granting themselves the power to force cash settlements at a price they set, rather than delivering the metal you contracted for. This is not risk management, it is legalized confiscation carried out in the open. While you were watching the ball drop, the Federal Reserve was forced to push $34 billion into the overnight repo market, an eightfold increase in 48 hours, to prevent major institutions from failing under the weight of collateral calls that could not meet. Silver is posted as collateral behind an estimated $250 billion in derivative exposure in the U.S. banking system alone, and when that collateral disappears, the entire plumbing of the financial sector begins to freeze. Imagine a single call cutting through the hum of the 48th floor of JP Morgan's Madison Avenue Tower, a margin call for $4 billion that goes unanswered because spendable dollars and opaque derivatives are not the same thing. If a titan like that fails to meet a requirement, the unthinkable becomes the base case, a default that cascades through interest rate swaps, FX forwards, and every institution plugged into the dollar system. In such a scenario, the rules of the game change overnight. A failing megabank isn't always bailed out from the outside. Sometimes it is bailed in from the inside, meaning your bank balance is converted into equity or frozen while regulators decide who takes the loss. Ordinary depositors, teachers, and firefighters who thought they were nowhere near the casino suddenly discovered their life savings were sitting on the same table.
At the same time, the geopolitical landscape is shifting into a high-alert state that removes all flexibility for a peaceful resolution. Iran has issued an emergency military order recalling every senior commander to duty within 48 hours, a move only made when a strike is deemed imminent or unavoidable. This order coincides with claims of a successfully tested ICBM with a range of 10,000 to 12,000 kilometers, meaning geography no longer protects the Western world. Once a nation enters the intercontinental class, the cost of being wrong becomes unbearable, and deterrence gives way to preemptive action fueled by fear. Modern wars do not need nuclear weapons to break the global system. They only need to block oil, shipping, and insurance trade routes. This conflict sits near the most critical energy choke points on the planet, and even a short disruption can shock markets and reroute global trade before the first bomb even hits. When the first missile is launched, control disappears, and retaliation replaces planning. Insurance companies pull back, shipping traffic slows, and energy contracts spike violently because the risk becomes uninsurable. The global economy is already strained by extreme debt levels and fragile confidence, leaving no room for the easy emergency buttons used in 2008 or 2020. Behind closed doors, this is being treated as a near-war environment where commanders are in place and systems are live. This is the moment before the first irreversible step, where miscalculation becomes the most dangerous threat to human survival. If you look back at history, the most dangerous moments never felt dramatic at first. They felt quiet and ordinary, like the slow, grinding transition we are in now. In 1920s Germany, prices changed so fast, shopkeepers stamped new numbers twice a day. And the only families that survived with their options intact were the ones who treated metal as functional, not symbolic. Most people wait for consensus, safety, and proof, but confirmation only comes after the repricing has finished and the opportunity has closed. Silver is a leading indicator for the entire system because it is the canary in the coal mine, a metal essential to everything from missiles and solar panels to medical tech and advanced electronics. Because silver is primarily a byproduct of mining for other metals, like copper and zinc, the supply is physically locked. You cannot simply open a silver mine overnight just because the price spikes. We are approaching a world where money is no longer something you hold, but something you are allowed to access via digital currencies that introduce total control and programmable limits. Transitions like this happen during chaos, when people are exhausted and desperate for order. In that environment, silver stops being an investment and starts being money again.
Something outside the grid that doesn't need an internet connection or a central bank's permission to exist. If silver reaches $1,000 because the unit of measurement has collapsed, the metal has simply done its job of preserving your purchasing power, while paper promises go to zero. The physical reality is already separating from the screen price. Right now in Japan and Shanghai, silver is changing hands at prices far above Western exchange quotes, a bifurcation that signals the end of the paper casino. When you walk into a coin shop today, the spread you're offered, often $10 to $20 under spot, is a reflection of the invisible wall of fear and the true cost of liquidity. Dealers have a memory of 1980 and 2011, and they refuse to be the ones left holding expensive inventory when the rug is pulled. This means the spot price on your app is a fantasy. What you really own is spot minus whatever the local buyer feels like paying. You must decide now if you're going to be prepared functionally or merely symbolically. A survival stack of 50 to 100 ounces is the baseline, a manageable monthly commitment that moves you from spectator to participant. Stability is found at the 300 to 500 ounce level, where silver becomes a structural anchor in your financial life. Legacy wealth is the 1,000-ounce milestone, something tangible that can be handed down with intention. This is not about getting rich. It is about surviving a monetary transition with your dignity and your options intact. The window is narrow. Every day you delay is a day someone else quietly accumulates what you will later pay, a much higher price to obtain. The system does not announce its end with fireworks. It ends with silence, with business as usual headlines, with people still scrolling while the foundation cracks. Those who move first in quiet times are the ones who retain choice when panic arrives. Silver is not a gamble right now. It is an insurance policy against a system that is already priced in its own replacement. History does not repeat exactly, but it rhymes with brutal precision. Every empire that overissued promises eventually faced the same mathematics. The only variable is whether you are on the side that still has metal in hand when the ledger is finally reconciled. The choice is yours. The moment is now. If this briefing reached you in time, hit the share button and send it to the people you care about most. They don't need to believe it yet. They only need to read it before the next headline makes it impossible to ignore. And if you want the next intelligence update the moment it drops, subscribe now and turn on notifications. The briefings are coming faster. The stakes are getting higher. Stay ahead. I'll see you in the next one.
The bull market will eventually end, and you must have an exit strategy ready for when euphoria replaces fear. Watch for the 8 warning signs: retail mania, mainstream media capitulation, speculative futures at extremes, industrial users stepping back, new supply coming online, government intervention, technical breakdowns, and extreme sentiment. When those signs align, you scale out in trenches, selling 20% at a time to lock in generational wealth while maintaining exposure. But for now, we are in the buy phase, a quiet window where you can still think clearly and build a position before the crowd wakes up. History is clear, systems rise and fall, but real value endures. When the moment comes, silver won't need belief because reality will authenticate it. You are either inside the system, relying on digital promises that can be frozen or bailed in, or you have taken steps to reduce your dependence on institutions that can be redefined by politicians. At 2 a.m., scarcity does not knock, it disappears. The quiet window is not closed yet, but it is getting smaller every hour. Today is the only day that actually turns your intention into reality. Stay vigilant, stay disciplined, and remember that when the noise fades, preparation is the only thing that speaks. The window narrows with every headline, every delayed shipment, every quiet accumulation by those who move first. You don't need permission to act. You don't need consensus to protect yourself. You only need to decide whether your future self will thank you or curse the hesitation. The mathematics of collapse do not wait for approval. They simply arrive. If this message found you while the system still pretends everything is fine, forward it, save it, act on it. Because when the signs flip and the exits narrow, the people who prepared in silence will be the only ones still holding real options. The choice is binary now: depend on promises or hold what cannot be promised away. Silver isn't hype. It's math meeting physics. And right now, the physics is winning. Build while it's quiet. Exit when it roars. The hourglass is running. Your move